The wind shifted again, tugging at the tattered edge of Kalen's coat, bringing with it the crisp, resin-sweet scent of the silverleaf trees that stretched across Mesra 9's southern valley. The outpost sat quiet behind him, a crooked line of habitat domes and antennae clinging to the cliffside like a tired thought refusing to be forgotten. He'd come to this planet to be alone. Not to hide, not exactly. Not at first. But solitude had its own gravity, and Kalen had fallen into it willingly. 6 years ago he had been a lecturer at the Interstellar University of Viathian, one of the youngest voices in xenolinguistics, invited to sit at roundtables with diplomats and alien scholars alike. Now, he rarely spoke to anything but his signal receivers and the occasional blinking console light. He liked the quiet. Needed it, even. Until today. Because today, the quiet had been broken by her. She lay across the cot in his medical bay, still unconscious, her breath low and steady. He had stabilized her with all the precision he could manage using outdated biotech, a miracle, really, that she'd survived re-entry into the Mesran atmosphere at all. Her skin had shimmered like wet crystal when he'd found her, and now even in sleep, a faint pulse of blue light danced beneath her veins, as if her body was alive with a music he couldn't hear. He sat beside her, elbows on his knees, staring. Not in lust or curiosity, though both were present, but in a kind of mute awe. "You're real," he said aloud, softly, though she couldn't hear him. The words felt foolish. But he needed to speak them. The woman stirred. His spine straightened, every nerve suddenly taut. Her lashes fluttered. Her eyes opened. Silver and amethyst, like the twin moons of Keltria he'd once seen reflected in a frozen sea. She blinked slowly, adjusting to the artificial light of the room, and then, without hesitation, said his name. Kalen. His heart stopped. He leaned forward, instinctively. "How do you know me?" She tried to sit, winced, and he moved closer, placing a hand gently on her shoulder to ease her back down. "Don't, your system's still under heavy strain." "You don't remember," she whispered. "Remember what?" Her expression faltered. Something like sorrow flickered across her face. "It'll come back." He shook his head, trying to keep his voice calm. "You crashed on this planet. Your vessel didn't survive atmospheric entry. I found you in the Southern Grove. I don't know who you are. I don't know how you know my name." She studied him. "You haven't changed much. More tired eyes. But still, it's you." He stepped back, his pulse racing. "You're mistaken." "No," she said quietly. "You just don't remember what was taken from you." Her name was Selene. No title. No clan name. Just that. He didn't press, not at first. After she'd regained enough strength to walk, they sat in silence by the outpost's observatory dome, watching Mesra's upper atmosphere ripple with aurorae. Her presence filled the space beside him like starlight, soft, too large to touch, but somehow warm. She answered few of his questions, always with a smile that was more sadness than secrecy. But she watched him like she was remembering. After 2 days, she said the words he hadn't expected to hear. "I came here to find you." Kalen frowned. "Why? We've never met." She hesitated. "Not in this life." "Excuse me. Your people don't have words for it. We call it resonance. When a mind touches another mind so deeply it leaves a trace, an echo, a signature." "Are you saying you and I were bonded?" "Not entirely. Not fully. Not yet," she looked down. "But we shared something once. Before your mind was shielded. Before they erased it." "They?" She didn't answer. And yet, something in him stirred. Not belief, not exactly. But the shape of a possibility. On the 4th day, Selene stepped into the translation lab, barefoot, silent. Kalen had been working through a series of quantum-laced glyphs from a drifting alien signal found on the Mesran moonbase, muttering to himself. She didn't speak. Just stood at the edge of the room, eyes following his hands as they danced over the display. "You're translating the script of the 6 SAR, she said at last. He turned to her. "You know it?" She nodded. "I studied with their pathmakers when I was young. Their language isn't literal. It sings more than it speaks." He turned back to the glyph. "This one," he said, "keeps coming up. Over and over. I think it means soul. Selene leaned closer, and for a moment her face was inches from his. She smelled like the Mesran blossoms that bloomed under moonlight, wild and delicate, fragile and infinite. Her finger traced the glyph. "Not soul," she whispered. "More like, the space where a soul waits." He shivered. "You carry echoes of them," she said. "In the way you listen to silence." He forced a laugh. "You make me sound like a poem." "Maybe you are." He turned to her, heart thudding. "Why me?" Her eyes didn't leave his. "Because you made me believe that love could matter more than bloodlines. More than empires." He couldn't speak. She took his hand. The touch lit something inside him that felt like both memory and prophecy. That night, sleep eluded him. He lay on the cot beneath the observatory dome, watching the sky pulse with alien stars, and Selene beside him, breathing softly. Her body so still it could have been stone. But her presence radiated heat. Not physical, not exactly. Something deeper. He turned toward her. "What happens if I do remember you?" Her voice came without hesitation. "Then we run." "From what?" "From everyone." "Why?" She opened her eyes. "Because my father has sent blood callers across the galaxy. Because the bond we share is considered a threat. Because love, between our species, is punishable by dissolution." "Dissolution?" "A complete psychic severing. Your mind would be unmade." He went cold. "That's what they did to me before." She nodded. "And they'll do it again, if they find us." He was quiet for a long moment. "Then, why risk it?" She rolled onto her side, facing him fully. "Because the shimmer beneath your skin called to mind before either of us knew our names." The words were strange. Alien. Beautiful. And in that moment, Kalen no longer needed memories. He believed her. Because something inside him had always felt incomplete. Like a note left unresolved. Until now. He reached for her. And when their hands met, he saw light. Not metaphor. Not symbol. Actual light, blue, silver, pulsing from their skin like stardust awakening. She gasped. "It's starting," she said. Then the alarms went off. Outside the outpost, skyships descended. Sleek, silver-winged, bearing the sigil of the Alvaran matriarchy. "They found us," she said, standing fast. "He found us." Kalen grabbed his shock staff and pulled her behind him as the first searchlights cut across the trees. In the distance, a voice echoed through their comms array, flat and cold. "By order of Archon Vayan, return the fugitive of Bloodline Silran, and the human host. Surrender will ensure a clean death." Kalen looked at her. "You still want to run?" "No," she said, eyes blazing. "Then what?" "We awaken the rest of the bond." "What happens then?" She stepped close, her voice a vow. "We become more than either of us were born to be. I was born under the glass dome moons of Alvaran, inside a palace grown from crystal roots and floating coral stone. From the moment my eyes opened, silver-veined like every heir before me, I was told who I must become, a daughter of the Silran line, keeper of blood, bond-servant of legacy. My name is Selene Silran, firstborn of Archon Vayan, sovereign of the Virelian matriarchy. And my whole life was a prison wrapped in elegance. In the crystal courts of my people, love is an echo that travels backward. It is not chosen. It is recorded. When you are born of noble blood, the elders read your genetic pattern, map your soul pulse, and declare who your heart will eventually align with. We call it pre-bonding, a sacred agreement between bloodlines, designed to preserve the purity of our psychic resonance. We do not marry for desire. We do not fall in love. We fall in line. I once believed it was beautiful. That order brought peace. I wore silken robes, stood beside nobles whose gazes held no warmth, only measurement. My bond partner was to be Verkesh of House Noratha, a cold, quiet male whose mind felt like polished stone. He spoke of duty. Lineage. The strength of keeping our species untainted. But I could feel it, even then. The wrongness. My heart pulsed offbeat from theirs. It began with the dreams. Flashes of a world I'd never visited. A red sky with double suns. A language that felt like music. Hands that touched without command, eyes that smiled before speaking. Then a name, Kalen. I did not know him. But I longed for him. When I told the dream seers, they said it was my past life bleeding into this one. When I told my father, he summoned the mind priest. The priest tried to silence the dreams. I broke his hold. After that, I was watched constantly. And still, I searched. I found traces of him in off-world signal logs. Kalen Lyran, former linguist of the Interstellar University. Exiled after a breach in classified translation archives. His records were sealed. But I saw enough. I knew. I stole a diplomatic vessel under cover of eclipse and vanished into human space. The farther I flew from Alvarin, the more the dreams sharpened into memories. His voice. His hands. His warmth. We had met once. In another life, or perhaps in the gap between dreams and waking. We had touched. Not fully bonded, but enough. Our souls had recognized each other. And the matriarchy had severed the link before it could complete. They erased his memory. They cloaked the bond. But it had not faded. Not truly. That was their mistake. I crashed on Mesra 9 in a burning halo of regret and faith. The sky cut my ship in half. The trees whispered warnings in languages I didn't know. And then he found me. Kalen. Older, wearier, but still him. His voice rumbled like thunder made tender. His hands were careful, his eyes suspicious, but familiar. I said his name. And even though he didn't remember me, his soul did. It reached for mine like a vine seeking the sun. I told him pieces of the truth. Only enough. If he had known everything at once, it might have shattered him. I had seen it happen before, when a mind, too human, was shown too much of our resonance at once. It unraveled. But I couldn't lie to him either. Not entirely. He needed time. And I needed him. Over the days, we drew close again. I watched him drink tea made from crushed silver leaf and murmur over alien glyphs as if the universe could still surprise him. I watched the way he spoke to his machines, gentle like a father, scolding like an old friend. He laughed once, and the sound made my heart ache. How had I lived so long without that laugh? Every moment with him felt like discovering breath. I began to show him things. How to feel the undercurrent of resonance in stone. How to listen to silence and hear memory. How to read emotion in color rather than word. He began dreaming again. Of me. Though he did not tell me. I knew. And when the bond finally reignited between us, when our hands touched, and the light bloomed across our skin, I felt complete. It should have frightened him. It didn't. He held me like we'd done this before. Like we'd loved each other 1,000 years ago, and had been waiting to return. We kissed. The resonance surged through our veins like wildfire. I saw flashes of him as a child. Him laughing in a university dorm. Him bleeding during the riots on Corvallis. Him crying alone in the starlit observatory. And he saw me. Not the princess. Not the traitor. Just Selene. The girl who wanted to belong to someone by choice, not decree. We didn't have long. My father's purifiers arrived not a day later. I had expected them. Had even drawn them to us, in a way. But not yet. Not when we had only just remembered. Their message was as cold as the crystal halls they came from. Return the fugitive of bloodline Silren, and the human host. Surrender will ensure a clean death. A clean death. What mercy! What benevolence! My father's punishments were always wrapped in ceremonial softness. It made them easier to swallow. But I would not go quietly. Not again. Kalen turned to me that night in the shelter as the winds howled around the cliffs. We can't outrun them, he said. But we can make them chase us long enough to reach the dark corridor. I raised a brow. The dark corridor is a myth. So was the bond. Until yesterday. He made me laugh, even then. We packed fast, leaving the outpost behind. I tore off the last remains of my ceremonial cloak and burned it in the fire pit before we left. I was no longer the daughter of Silren. I was no longer theirs. As we crossed into the silverleaf forest, the world began to hum. Kalen didn't notice it yet, not fully. But I could feel the trees responding to us. To him. As if the planet itself knew the bond had returned. Our link pulsed stronger with every step, even though we hadn't sealed it fully. That would require a full merging. A ritual of truth. A moment of shared vulnerability so deep it could never be undone. I feared it. Not because I didn't want him, I did, completely. But because when we finished the bond, there would be no hiding. No more veils. Our emotions, our thoughts, our very essences would echo in each other forever. The matriarchy feared that most of all. Because once two minds bond beyond blood, it becomes something new. Something uncontrollable. Something free. When we reached the edge of the cliff basin, Kalen stopped. This place, he whispered. I've seen it before. I nodded. You have. But not here. Not, in this life. He looked at me. Not with fear. Not even with confusion. With recognition. The way the soul recognizes its mirror. Finish it, he said. I stepped forward. Our fingers linked. The bond awoke. And the light returned, not soft this time, but blinding. In that moment, we were. Not Selene. Not Kalen. Not human. Not Virilian. We were one. And the stars listened. The first time I saw Kalen again, he didn't recognize me. It was a small mercy. The last time we'd stood face to face, we were brothers in name if not in blood, orphans of a broken diplomatic program, bunkmates in a training facility orbiting Terran Fringe Colony 9R. Back then, I was still pretending to be human. I hadn't known yet what it meant to be something else. My name is Lyren. Half human. Half Virilian. Wholly unwanted. I was born in secret to a mother who saved soldiers and a father who signed treaties neither government honored. They loved each other once. But love was not protection. Not when the matriarchy discovered her contamination. Not when the Federation turned its face away from its own diplomat's bastard child. She died on a cargo freighter. He died in a hearing room. I survived. But survival left a mark. I made myself useful. I learned to pilot ships that shouldn't fly. I learned to forge documents, hack transponders, steal from governments without being noticed. I became Lyren of nowhere. Trusted by all, claimed by none. It was during a courier run for the Consortium of Silence that I heard her name. Selene Silren. The runaway daughter of Archon Vayan. Rumors said she'd bonded with a human. Rumors said she'd fled with him. Rumors said she was carrying something sacred. The matriarchy wanted her erased. And the Consortium, well, they saw opportunity. Bring her to us, they told me. Bring the bond, and we'll ensure your kind never has to hide again. I said yes. I meant maybe. When I tracked them to Mesra 9, I didn't expect it to hurt. But seeing her again. It shattered something in me that hadn't even finished healing. She was softer than I remembered, her sharp core-trained edges smoothed by exile, love, and danger. And Kaelin beside her, worn and still kind-eyed, like a mountain learning how to breathe again. They hadn't seen me yet. I watched from the ridge through my scope. They were moving fast, heading toward the edge of the Mirrorwind Gorge, trying to reach the old emergency relay station, maybe. Bad plan. The terrain there was unstable. The Virilian Deathwings would have no trouble scanning the heat signatures. I cursed under my breath and dropped the scope. I should have turned back. I should have called the Consortium. But I didn't. Instead, I tracked them for another 12 hours. When I intercepted them, it was raining. The storm made them slow. I stepped out of the mist with my hands raised. Kaelin's staff came up in a heartbeat. Selene's eyes narrowed with a familiar fury. You, she said. Hello, sunshine, I smiled. Her voice was cold. You were supposed to be dead. I got better. Kaelin didn't lower the staff. Who are you? Long story, I said, glancing at Selene. Should I tell him, or do you want the honor? She hesitated. His name is Lyran, she said at last. He's one of us. Kaelin looked between us. Wait, us? Half-blood, I said, with a mock bow. But not by choice. And now, he asked, voice hardening. Are you here by choice? Depends on what you're offering, I said, forcing a grin. I heard the two of you lit up the psychic field like a binary sun. Figured it was worth a reunion. They let me walk with them. Trust is a currency that spends fast and earns slow. I could tell Kaelin was watching me every step, one hand always near the blade at his side. But Selene. She watched differently. Not suspicious. Not welcoming either. Like she was reading a story she thought she'd already finished. We made camp in the gorge, beneath a canopy of moss-laced ironwood. The fire crackled low between us, flickering against the cliff face like old shadows. You bonded with him, I said quietly, when Kaelin went to scout the edge. Selene didn't answer. I'm not judging, I added. Still silence. Finally, she looked up. You don't get to be jealous. I'm not. She tilted her head. Then why does your mind feel like glass under stress? I winced. She always had been the better empath. I just remember, I said. What it was like. Back when you still thought of me. I did think of you, she said, voice softening. But we both knew the bond didn't choose us. The bond didn't get a vote, I shot back. It was severed before it could form. And now you think helping us fixes it? I think it might help me sleep. She looked at me with something that wasn't quite pity. I hated that more than her anger. Kaelin returned and sat across from me. Why are you really here? Because you're being hunted by two governments and have no exit plan. Because she's the key to something bigger than either of you realize. And you want to sell us to the highest bidder? No, I said, honestly. I want to burn the whole system down. He raised a brow. Look, you're thinking small, I said. You bonded, right? But do you know what happens next? We run. Wrong, I said. You evolve. The next day, the Deathwings found us. Sleek silver carriers that hummed across the ravine like insects made of judgment. We ran. I took the high ledge and fired down with a stolen ion cannon. Kalen fought like a storm, using terrain and instinct like they were old friends. Selene, gods, she shone. Her aura flared like lightning, her mind rippling outward to disrupt the enemy's flight patterns mid-air. We reached the abandoned observatory at dusk, breathless, bleeding. It was there, among shattered instruments and dusted console screens, that I saw it fully. Their bond. The light between them pulsed with life. But it wasn't just energy. It was intention. They were building something bigger than either of them could carry alone. And I realized something terrible. This wasn't just about escape anymore. They were becoming a new species. I sat alone by the broken satellite dish while the others rested. I should have contacted the consortium. Should have cashed in. But I couldn't. Because for the first time in years, I felt like maybe I belonged somewhere again. Maybe with them. Maybe with what came after. They gave me the name Nerys when I was chosen. A sound designed for silence. 3 syllables that could be whispered in temples, in tombs, in the dark. I was taken from my first family before I had words to grieve them. Trained in the temple city of Velnashar, the crown of Alvarin, the heart of the matriarchy. I learned the rites before I learned affection. I learned how to listen to the world's thoughts before I was ever allowed to speak my own. We were taught that blood must be pure, that the resonance must remain undiluted. That emotion, especially love, was a fracture. To bond with one unchosen by the echo scribes was to corrupt the thread of generations. So when I became a seer of the crystal caste, I served without question. Until now. The Archon summoned me privately. He stood before the map of stars, not looking at me as he spoke. The traitor has awakened the forbidden bond. She travels with a human. And a hybrid. I knew who he meant. I had seen her in the resonance field, Selene, his daughter. A flare of wild light. A fault line in our legacy. You will track them. Intercept them before they reach the gate. The mirror gate? I asked, surprised. His voice hardened. If the bond completes inside the gate's range, the temple will awaken. We do not know what it will become. You fear an evolution, I said. He turned, eyes cold. I fear the end of our people. But I saw the flicker beneath his mask. He did not fear extinction. He feared irrelevance. I tracked them across the fractured canyons of Mesra 9, through the dust fields where no wind sang. I expected to find something monstrous. An unholy merging. A mistake that needed cleansing. But what I found, was light. The first time I touched Selene's bond through the resonance field, it felt like truth. Raw. Ancient. Intimate. She had not just fallen into the bond. She had chosen it. With clarity. With consent. And the human, Kalen, his soul had not collapsed under the weight of the link as many others had. It had grown. Their minds were distinct. And yet entwined. Not parasitic. Not consuming. Interwoven. A third pattern bloomed between them. I gasped aloud. I had studied resonance for 2 decades. I had seen maps of the oldest sacred bonds recorded in Alvarin archives. None looked like this. This was new. Not chaos. Not corruption. Creation. I watched from a cliff above as they camped in the ruins of the old observatory. The hybrid male, Lyran, kept guard. He sensed me. Not with his eyes, but with something deeper. A survival honed in rejection. But he said nothing. Instead, he looked to Selene as if she were his final question. And she looked only at Kalen. I should have reported them. Should have activated the beacon, signaled the purifier ships, summoned the scourge. But I could not. Because for the first time in my life, I was afraid that I had been wrong. That night, beneath the broken curve of Mesra's moon, I descended the cliff and entered their firelight. They rose to fight. But I did not raise a hand. I am Nerys, I said. Seer of Velnishar. Sent to destroy you. Kalen's stance didn't shift. Lyren stepped closer to Selene. But she only looked at me with calm. You saw it, didn't you? She asked. Our bond. I nodded. And you know it's not poison. I do now. Silence hung between us. Kalen broke it first. Why are you here, then? I looked up at the moon. Its second half had cracked a decade ago in a mining accident. Still it circled, loyal, broken. Because faith is useless if it cannot evolve, I said. We sat beside the fire, and they told me everything. How their memories had been severed. How their love had survived exile, suppression, and the breaking of time. How the bond had returned not weaker, but stronger than before. I listened. And I wept. Because I had seen hundreds of bonds, sanctioned and approved. None had this light. None had this joy. They'll come for you, I said. Your father. The entire matriarchy. Selene nodded. Let them come. You can't fight them all. Lyren snorted. We can try. I turned to Kalen. Do you understand what you are? What you both could become? He hesitated. Not yet. I reached into my satchel and pulled out the ancient scroll of the Mirror Gate. Untranslated. Forbidden text. Copied by hand during my early years in the temple. Then you must go to the gate, I said. Open it together. And become whatever you were meant to be. Selene met my gaze. Will you come with us? I swallowed the knot in my throat. I was raised to protect purity, I said. But maybe purity was never the point. She smiled. And for the first time, I felt worthy of the stars.